super excited to be here in San Francisco. Today's actually my 1-year anniversary, so super happy about that.
These 6 women are going to give talks. What's exciting is it's women in all different stages of their career. Some people who work in data science, analytics, engineering, brand design, and product management, so across different functions. And they all have different stories to tell you.
I majored in a kind of a mix of psychology and computer science, which I'm destined to explain for the rest of my life. If you're wondering how I feel about being back at Strava, this picture pretty much sums it up.
In addition to the culture and the people, which I love, for me, it's really about the data. I've had a chance to work on some really interesting data sets across my career. I'm a big data geek.
So the chocolate factory is that positive association with your brand. We were missing a lot of the balance that pushes a good brand to become a great or extraordinary brand.
And I am not an athlete. The only time I really use Strava is times like these when I'm thrown on the stage and I have my heart in my mouth and I have to record my heart rate. And I work on the Performance Improvement Initiative, which is what this talk is about.
So we missed the deadline. No fun. I thought that, I'm never going to get to lead a project again. But my boss saw it totally differently. He was like, that was a good learning experience. And I earned respect and trust because I had showed how much I cared about making this thing successful. And this led to more opportunities in the future.
This is the URL. If you are thinking these 7 women are people you want to be working with, now is the time to check out that.
Strava. My name is James. I am Strava CEO. Incredibly thrilled to welcome Girl Geek here tonight. I hope everybody brought their running shoes. No, we're not going to make anybody run tonight. We're really excited for the program we have tonight. Please enjoy yourselves. Hope you get a chance to meet all the Strava team members who are here, and you get a chance to meet some of our great leaders. So I would like to bring up now Angie Chang, the founder of Girl Geek and a great partner in welcoming you all here tonight.
Thank you. Hi, my name's Angie Chang. I'm the founder of Girl Geek X. We've been organizing dinners like this for over a decade. How many of you, it's your first Girl Geek dinner? Oh, wow. Okay, it's about 40-50%. So I'll kind of go into why we do this every week. It just thrills us to be able to put amazing technical women on stage every week across different companies, encourage you to come in, eat the food, meet the people, meet each other, and also meet the amazing Strava engineers and recruiters that are here tonight.
So we don't just do these events anymore. We just launched a podcast, so go to your favorite thing, please rate it so that someone can find it at some point. But we take little bits from each of the dinners, and then the 3 of us chime in with our opinions because we have lots of those. And so we've got mentorship and imposter syndrome and learning and career transitions and all sorts of topics that you can listen to on your commute. And then more importantly, on March 8th, which is International Women's Day, mark your calendars, we're doing a 1-day virtual conference. So you can come tune in at your company if you want. You could host a viewing party, which would be really awesome for you guys to do in this cool space. You could just join us all day. And it's free, which is even better. So, and then if you want your company to get involved, definitely email us because we would love to have your company involved with it.
Hi, that was Gretchen who didn't introduce herself. I'm Sukrutha, so the 3 of us, we're the team behind Girl Geek X. Like Angie said, we've been around for 11 years now, and we went from 1 dinner of every few months to then once a month, and then now it's once a week. So it's been an incredible journey so far. If you just went to our website, girlgeek.io, you'll find links to the podcast. You'll find links to our Elevate conference, and I encourage you to sign up tonight for the conference because we want to make sure that we track who all are signing up and we give you the best experience possible because it's virtual, it's painless. You just need a strong network and a computer or a phone and you're set. I want to just quickly explain what we've learned is the value of networking and getting together and why it's so important for us to build this community. I'm sure a lot of you are just tired of being the only woman in the room sometimes, and it's becoming easier and easier now to recommend women to work on your team with you if you were to just network, if you were to just make more friends. And it's really, really important to prioritize networking even before you actually need it. So build your network before you actually need it, and you'll actually need it at some point. Because it takes a while to build a community that you need, and there's so much you can do when you're not alone. So that's all I have. Thank you so much for coming tonight. If this is your first dinner, like we saw a lot of you, we want to see you at all our dinners this year, at our conference, and please listen to our podcast. You just have to search for Girl Geek X on whatever podcast app you might have on your phone. And whatever you've missed so far, especially if this is your first time, you'll be able to catch up. Thank you. I'm going to hand it off to Steph.
Thank you. Hello, good evening. My name is Stephanie Hannon, and I am the Chief Product Officer here at Strava, and I am so proud to welcome you here. We are so excited to have Girl Geek X here in our new beautiful office space. Do you guys like it? Open, airy, room to run around, room to do push-ups and pull-ups, which is normal course of business here. I think it's really helpful to know who is here from Strava, so raise your hand. So there's a lot of people mingled, obviously, in the back, and on behalf of them, I want to welcome you here, and raise your hand if you are a Strava user for the visitors. Okay, great. Oh, that's awesome. So my job, I'm the MC, is just to tell you a little bit about the company and then get the lightning talks started. So as many of you already know, if you're Strava athletes, the origin of Strava is in this boathouse. So our founders, Michael and Mark, used to row together, and when they left the boathouse more than, I think, 2 or 3 decades ago, they wanted to create that same spirit of camaraderie and competition using technology once they were sort of out of college. And it resulted in what we now have built, which is the largest connected community of athletes, where every activity has impact. And you're gonna hear that word athlete a lot today, athlete or member of Strava. We consider anyone that is active an athlete. So whether you're training for a marathon or did the AIDS ride, or if you just do yoga once a week, or if hiking is your favorite sport, you're an athlete to us. So you're gonna hear that word a lot today. We're a 10-year-old company. We just had our anniversary, about 170 employees, and we are in 4 offices. So San Francisco, Denver, Bristol, and Hanover, New Hampshire. And I'm just going to keep saying throughout the presentation, we have a lot of jobs. So you're going to hear it from me now, you're going to hear it from me at the end, and there's a lot of people here who would love to meet you if you want to talk about that. Strava at its heart is digital motivation for athletes. So these are screenshots of our product. Pieces of it are segments. So every bit of the world is divided into segments, and every segment has a leaderboard. And that's been part of the engaging aspect of Strava. Memorialization, telling the story of your sport. Accountability and metrics to track, and then self-improvement, which is either I want to perform consistently or I want to get better, just helping you achieve your goal or your summit. So that's at the heart of what Strava is, but you're going to hear a ton more about it through the lightning talks. Some of you might have heard, if you read the Eventbrite invite, that before Strava I worked for Hillary Clinton. And in the 2016 presidential campaign, I was her chief technology officer. And I often get the question about why I made the transition from that job into Strava. And so I thought, for the first time ever, I'm going to tell you guys the top 5 reasons. So never before seen content. Even to my CEO over there. The first is it's a global product. Not many people know this statistic. 82% of our athletes are located outside of the United States. And to me, that, right, shocking number. It's a really exciting number. We're a 38 million community of connected athletes, 82% outside of the US, and that's interesting for building products. Thinking about if you just take runners, what is a runner in Rio like versus Copenhagen versus Sydney versus Tokyo? And how do you build a meaningful product that helps athletes all over the world is a really fascinating problem. Mission. So a lot of the work I've done in my life is mission driven. I worked on disaster response at Google, transparency in elections, making public transit a first order operation in Google Maps, just things that have mission matter to me. And our mission is helping the world be healthy and active. And so much good comes from that in terms of longevity in life, but also in resiliency in relationships and emotions and lots of good thing. And the mission is amazing here. Routes. So I spent a lot of my life at Google building Google Maps, and I'm obsessed with routes. And one of my favorite quotes in the world is, "Every route worth doing has been done and uploaded to Strava." Right? That's a big statement. Every route worth doing has been done and uploaded to Strava. There is no place you can run or ride in the world that we haven't met, but we haven't done, and you guys are athletes, we haven't done a great job of exposing that to you. And that's an amazing opportunity as a product person, as a builder. How can we make that discoverable and help athletes? Platform. So again, in Google Maps, being a platform was a big part of our success. The ability for people to embed Google Maps in their applications or to push data into Google Maps. Strava is a platform, and these are just a few samples of the types of organizations we work with. Whether it's a Garmin, where we can suck content from your Garmin watch into Strava, or a Relive, where data can be pulled out of Strava to create beautiful experiences, or the indoor studio. Wow, that's a hard thing to say. Right, team? I'm not nervous. It's the most number of people we've ever had in this room, I guarantee you, which is awesome. But also, you know, if you're a Peloton, if you're a flywheel mind-body person, we can also bring that content into Strava. And platforms are powerful, and they can scale with the innovation and excitement that happens even outside of your company. And finally, Metro. So we believe we're stewards of this amazing repository of community data. Metro is a part of Strava that works with cities. This is Copenhagen, and you can use aggregate data from Strava to see how traffic moves around your city. For example, just whether there's streets where a lot of people are riding without bike lanes, or this example in Copenhagen, which is seeing how traffic changed once a piece of infrastructure or a bridge was built. And that's amazing. So if we do it well, cities have more infrastructure for cycling. Cycling is safer, more trails, more green spaces. So I hope I've convinced you or explained to you what's magical for me about this company. And these 6 women are going to give talks. And what's exciting is it's women in all different stages of their career, some in their first year out of college, some who are in their second decade of work, people who work in data science, analytics, engineering, brand design, and product management, so across different functions. And they all have different stories to tell you. So just really thrilled to get this started. And finally, after the 6 talks, there is going to be Q&A and a panel, and all of us will be up here. I'm just putting this up now. I'll put it up again at the end. I think with a group this big, it's nice to crowdsource questions and let you guys vote on each other's questions, and that's what you can do with Slido. So it's GG Strava, and at any time during this event, you can go in there and add your question. If you don't have a question but you want to vote on questions, you can also check out that URL. So let's get started, and I'm going to bring up Annie.
Hi everyone, I'm Annie, and I'm an iOS engineer on the growth team. I've been at Strava since this past October, plus an internship in 2017. So today I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about what brought me to Strava and also about growth team culture at Strava. So I just graduated from Stanford in June, and at Stanford I majored in symbolic systems, which I'm destined to explain for the rest of my life means that I majored in a kind of a mix of psychology and computer science. And within that, I concentrated in human-computer interaction. So within that kind of general realm of interests, I worked in a health psychology lab as a research assistant. And my work there really got me interested in this question: what is the psychological power and impact of health-related user interfaces? And my passion and interest in this subject made me really want to work at a health tech company with a big user-facing side. And that's what brought me to Strava as an iOS engineer the summer before my senior year at school. When I returned to school, I wanted to keep exploring this field, so I worked at a company called Lark as a health psychology content consultant. So Lark is basically a health coach chatbot in an app on your phone, and so I wrote content for conversations like these with users who were struggling with diabetes or hypertension. And then after graduation, I returned back to Strava as a full-time iOS engineer. If you're wondering how I feel about being back at Strava, this picture pretty much sums it up. This is me running in our JP Morgan corporate 5K. But yeah, this really says it all. I love Strava. It's been such a fantastic experience working here. We are hiring. So now that you guys know a little bit about me, I'm going to talk some about growth team culture at Strava. Maybe it's helpful to talk about what the growth team means at Strava. So we really focus on bringing users into the product and also on the new user journey, so a user's first 7 days in the product. And for us, growth team culture really revolves around these two themes of inclusivity and empowering experimentation. So what do I mean by inclusivity? We're very inclusive of both ideas and people, and that comes across in many ways through the way we do brainstorms, the way we think about our users, and also who we give task ownership to on the team. So our brainstorms are very inclusive of different roles on the teams. When we have kind of an idea of a project we want to pursue, we get engineers of all different levels, designers and PMs in the same room. And although the quality of our sketches are not always equal, the ideas are hopefully always taken equally seriously. It's a really collaborative environment. There are no vetoes in this room, and it's really all about cultivating that creativity and collaboration. I've definitely found that getting all these different perspectives and roles in the same room, the whole is much greater than the sum of the parts. Next, user perspectives. So on the growth team, we have this mantra, I am not the user. We repeat this a lot. It helps us keep front of mind the fact that I use Strava in a much different way than the typical user, especially the typical new user. And therefore, I should build with that in mind. I should not be building a product for myself. Finally, task ownership. So you don't have to have been here the longest or to have the most experience to own tasks on the growth team. Within my first 2 weeks of being here, I got to build this feature where you can post a sticker of your activity to your Instagram story. Now, as you can imagine, I tested this feature a lot over the course of my building it. I was posting an inappropriate number of runs to my Instagram, my personal Instagram story, which resulted in quite a bit of confusion on the part of my friends. I received a lot of DMs like this. Now that I've talked some about inclusivity, I'm going to move on to this idea of empowering experimentation. So experimentation is a really common thing on a lot of growth teams, but at Strava, I'd like to say we have a particularly test it culture. So that means that no matter who you are on the team, if you're excited about an experiment idea, and if there's kind of plausible reason to believe that it'll positively impact one of our core metrics, we really encourage you to run with it. And I think that's evidenced by the fact that we actually set aside quite a bit of time to allow people to run with it. So the day before Thanksgiving, there's in the kind of smoky haze that I'm sure we all remember, my fellow engineer on the growth team, Tim, and Elise, who you guys will hear from in a second, declared it a mini experiments day. So they said you can run today, you can take the day and run whatever experiment you want to, as long as you follow these guidelines, collaborate with design, target a specific metric that we care about, and don't take more than 4 hours or so to build it. So I went ahead and created this super simple copy change where I changed the text on the follow button to say follow back if that user already follows you. This was really small. It was only a few hours of work, but it resulted in a huge lift in the overall follows on Strava, which is really exciting. And I think this is a super cool example of cultivating creativity at all levels of the team, because after we knew about the potential here, we put in additional resources into this same idea, and one of the data scientists worked with a senior engineer on the team to create a machine learning version of this same test that has recently gone live and also had extremely positive results. And so that's kind of a cool example of how this empowering experimentation culture can really result in a very cool momentum. This culture is not exclusive to the growth team. We also here at Strava have something called jams. So 4 times a year we set aside 3 days for basically a company-wide hackathon where everyone can work on whatever they want to that they're excited about related to Strava for 3 days. It's a really cool chance to kind of switch up the pace of things and also collaborate with people that you don't usually get to work with. So for the most recent Strava jams, I created yet another quite simple test. I put a country flag emoji on the bottom of users' profile pictures. Now this was not quite as much of a glaring success as the follow back test, because it turns out our backend does not distinguish between Northern Ireland and England, which meant that about 16 hours after this went live, we were experiencing quite a few angry support tickets from Irish users, wondering why yours truly had put a Union Jack flag on the bottom of their profile pictures. That just goes to show that I am not the user. Thank you so much. That's it.
Thank you, Annie. Hi, I'm Cathy Tanimura. I'm Senior Director of Analytics and Data Science here at Strava, and I'm going to talk to you about how data, scale, and community allows us to make a really outsized impact. So a little bit about me. I'm a big data geek. Didn't used to be a cool thing to say, but I feel like I'm in good company here. So I've had the chance to work on some really interesting data sets across my career. I was at StubHub, where I got to work on sports and concert ticket data sets. I was at Zynga, working on games, social interactions, Lonely Cows, if you remember those. I moved to a company called Okta, worked on a lot of security, B2B app marketplace sort of data, and now I'm at Strava, where I've been for the last year or so. So I get a lot of questions, why Strava? So in addition to the culture and the people, which I love, for me, it's really about the data. So let me tell you about the data. In this whole kind of like big data space, there's kind of 3 V's that we talk about, so I'll just walk through them. First is the volume, so how much data do you have? As Steph mentioned, we have 38 million members, we've had over 2 billion uploads, 6.7 billion miles of activities in 2018 alone, that's a lot of sweat, and over 90 million social interactions per week. Second V, velocity. There's a lot going on. We have about 20 uploads per second. We are a global community, which means it's always time for a preferred activity somewhere. We'd like to call them preferred activities if you don't know what that is. We support almost 40 of them, everything from alpine skiing to yoga, in addition to cycling and running, of course. And finally, variety, and this was what really sold Strava for me. With our global community of athletes doing lots of activities, we have all sorts of different data sets kind of within the broader scope. So geospatial, longitudinal, people training over time, social, global, as I mentioned a few times. We have in-app interactions to look at. We have a subscriptions business. We have platform integrations, health and fitness. But most of all, the data is really about people doing what they love, following their passions, striving toward the goals that really motivate them. And that's just a really kind of cool, interesting data set to work with. So, and we do all this with a relatively small team. So I'm going to walk you through a few examples of the impact that we've made so far and things we're thinking about. So first, I want to talk to you about motivation and some of the work our analytics team has done in this space. So we've been able to do some really interesting work thinking about how and when, let me say, so one of the things we found in all of this, technology space, there's a lot of devices, there's a lot of apps, but what really motivates people is the people. So it's the people that you connect with, it's the people who support you, it's the people who motivate you to get out of bed in the morning. So we've been able to do some really interesting work around this. A few findings we've had, people who do activities with other people spend more time doing them. They also go further. So having somebody there with you helps you go for that longer run, get out of bed in the morning when it's cold and you might not feel like doing that. The next impact I want to talk about is inside of our walls in our core engineering. So I want to tell you a little story about Strava segment leaderboards. And for those of you who aren't as familiar, let me give you a quick intro to them. We have these things called Strava segments. They're member-created portions of road or trail where athletes can compete for time. So you do an activity. This is an example of mine where there's a segment that's a portion of Golden Gate Park where I like to ride. When you upload your activity, we calculate the amount of time it takes you to cross that space. An activity can have multiple segments. So I ride from here to my home in the outer Richmond. I cross lots of different segments. We calculate your time for all of those when you upload. I should mention we have over 15 million segments all over the world, tens of billions of efforts across all of those segments. So it's quite a lot of data. And then we place that effort onto a leaderboard. We do this while you're uploading. People like to go upload, then go check their placement on that leaderboard. I'm not particularly fast, but it's still fun to see how I stack up. I tend to go to the most finely sliced leaderboard where I might actually show up more than 1,000. But it's quite an honor to be in the top of the list. And if you are top of, number one, you get to be the kind of king or queen of the mountain. And it's quite an honor. So this all works great. This has been like a really important feature that people love. And it's all well and good until we get an event like Ride London. So for those of you who don't know, Ride London is a huge cycling festival put on by the City of London. It has a number of different events. It has some pro events. It has some amateur events. Tens of thousands of people compete across these events. Lots of them are Strava athletes, which is fantastic. And they do their activities, and they upload, and they go to check their leaderboards. And this reliably brought down Strava for a number of years. Not a great place to be. And so some of our engineers decided to go and fix this problem. So just for some history on how this feature was implemented, way back in the day, this was one of the original Strava features. SQL queries were how they were built. I love SQL queries. I'm a data geek, but these don't really scale. From there, we moved into an architecture leveraging Redis and Scala, which worked for a while, but ended up with some hotspots, outages, when we got lots of people uploading at the same time, like an event with like Ride London. So the work was done to move it to a more modern architecture where we're using Kafka for streaming and Cassandra for the data storage behind the leaderboards. So at our scale, we really needed to have an architecture that could support thousands of data points per second, again, across tens of billions of data points. And we have a whole series of posts on our engineering blog, which I'll encourage you to go check out if you're interested. And this was such a big accomplishment that even our marketing team got excited about it and made a public announcement. Hey, Strava stayed up. We had 15,000 people uploading from Ride London in 2017. Also stayed up in 2018, which was fantastic. And then the final area of impact I want to talk about is around discovery. So this idea of, we know all these segments, we know all these places in the world people are active. How can we help people discover them? How can we help people stay motivated to go somewhere new, to do something fresh? So we've done some various data science projects around this. We've become sort of well known for a kind of classic Strava heat map. You can see where people are riding and running in the world. One of my goals this year was to do some open water swimming, and I was very excited to find that Strava heat maps works for swimming too. A lot of swimming going on in the bay. It's been pretty cold out lately. Does anybody notice that? Not really when I want to jump in aquatic park. So how about Hawaii? I know that Waikiki Diamond Head area looks a lot more appealing at this time of year. We think, this is great, but how can we push this further? How can we help people really find specific routes in the world, places to go that are new, that are different, that have the right profile of trail, things that they're looking for. And then beyond that, into workouts, into devices, even into the kind of virtual workout space like Zwift, all sorts of interesting opportunities in this space, so stay tuned. So just to wrap it up, talked about kind of our data, our scale, our community, and how we really think this work allows us to make an impact on our athletes, our partners, our communities, and our teammates really every day, which has been super exciting for me. Thank you.
Hi. Thank you all for coming. There we go. I'm Amanda. I'm a brand designer here at Strava. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about what it's like being a brand designer, and particularly an in-house designer. You okay? Oh, sorry. Okay, bless you. So, jumping in, I have identified and boiled down what I think are the two things that make up a really winning brand design. The first one is what I call a household name. It's when people can quickly recognize your brand in the wild. So that's like you see a logo, you see an ad or a billboard, and you immediately know the company. Even better is you hear the name on the BART and you know it without seeing anything. So that's like that quick recognition. The second component of the winning brand design, I think, is what I call the chocolate factory. I'm going to caveat this and just say these are not industry terms. So the chocolate factory is that positive association with your brand. Even better, it is anticipation in engaging with your brand. It's kind of those quirky moments. I think of it like the Willy Wonka chocolate factory, where there's that delightful surprise around every corner and you can't wait to get there. And so the thing about these two qualities that make up a winning brand design is that they are kind of naturally at odds with one another. The household name requires a kind of consistent familiarity that makes you comfortable with that brand. It makes it feel credible and reliable. But the chocolate factory quality is what keeps it exciting and keeps it churning. It's like you turn a corner and you're licking wallpaper, and then you run around and you're jumping into a chocolate fountain, and it keeps you coming back. So I'm just going to rewind a little bit and give you a little bit of insight. I didn't know what to call this slide, so I figured Amanda was like an apt title. So I'm going to give you a little background about me. I've had a pretty varied design background. So I started out actually as an analog printmaker, making posters, woodcuts, lithographies, and etchings. And from there, I was an architectural brand designer. And what that meant was, before a building was built, I would design the branding for it. And so in the 5 years that it took for a structure to go up, you could kind of get some marketing out there, some anticipation, some hype about that place, whether it was a residential place or maybe a new building on a school campus. So there were a lot of different clients. It was a lot of different stakeholders, a lot of different types of buildings, little brand projects. From there, I actually went on to co-found a product design company, not a digital product, but a physical product. The company was E1 Timepieces, and we made timepieces for people who are visually impaired. And as a co-founder, I led marketing, brand identity, and the visual design. And then went on to a traditional design agency called Stoltz up in Boston. I did everything from the Bright Horizons signage outside of a daycare to the dental convention is coming to town and someone's got to design that brochure. So again, a lot of different stakeholders. And then I was a book designer, actually just around the corner at Chronicle Books. And there I did lifestyle books, self-help books. I did a lot of cat calendars. That was really big when I was there. But again, it felt like a lot of different clients. There's like for every manuscript, for every author, it needed a new look and feel. After that, I went into design consulting at an agency called IDEO. They're headquartered in the Bay Area. And the work there was incredibly conceptual, really future-facing. I mostly dabbled in full environmental build-outs, so hypothetical build-outs in retail, in automotive, and in medicine. So really exciting, fertile work, but again, a lot of clients. And that kind of brings us to the present day. So how did I arrive at being an in-house brand designer? When I looked back on my full career, I kind of did this little blink, and I noticed that a lot of my work was in consulting. And so what that meant was a huge breadth of work, but I didn't really get to go super deep, because a client would essentially, as a consultant, they would come up to me, tell me a little bit about their company, maybe push some brand guidelines toward me, and then it was my job as a consultant before Strava to come up with some designs, make some suggestions, present it, and everyone's like, whoa, that's so shiny and new, I love it. And I'd be like, peace. And then the in-house designers would have to pick up all the pieces and then quickly scramble to try to figure out how to make sense of it. So I felt like it was really love them and leave them, and I was having a blast. But I really wanted to see how my design could be implemented, get out into the world, what the feedback was on that, and then how it could evolve into something else, or how it would change over time. And so, bam, Strava. I came to Strava in-house. For me, this was a huge move. It was a little settling down. So Strava made me some promises. And then I was like, I'll honor and respect your brand. You can trust me. So far, it's been really good. So as soon as I was hired, I kind of jumped into it. And this is a little delay, but I jumped into it with the kind of same intensity and fervor that I had done the decade before in consulting. And what that meant was I was like, it's gonna look like this, it's gonna look super cool, we're gonna use motion this way. This is a little vignette of my first few months at Strava, a lot of really fun and engaging visuals. I felt like there was something for everyone, a little nugget that people could grab onto. And I think that the work was really fun, but when we took a step back, we noticed we were really squarely over-indexing in that chocolate factory excitement. And we were missing a lot of the balance that pushes a good brand to become a great or extraordinary brand. One where, yeah, you're getting all of the those shots of endorphins when you see something new and you want to engage it, but there's that reliability and that consistency and that familiarity. And so the last, I've been here a year plus now, and I would say that we've been working really, really hard to bring that visual consistency, that strength of brand, that awareness to all of the visuals that we have done. This is just the last few months, without losing that nugget of something really interesting and good and juicy. And for me, that means in-house has a really apt name. I kind of stepped back and I was like, why do they call them in-house designers? And I was like, oh, I get it now. After this presentation, I get it. So I think that it's called in-house because when you join a company, a house, a home, you are tasked with being a part of that place as the brand designer. It's not your job to tear down walls or relocate bathrooms or decide that you want a sunroom or like a outdoor sauna. But it is your job to keep things interesting there, to make a house, which is a company, into a home, to paint the walls or bring in pictures. And at the end of the day, you want it to be someplace that is welcoming, that is reliable, but you also have the liberty to bring home the occasional Oompa Loompa. Thank you.
Whoa, that orange totally disappeared, and we are videotaping, and I'm extremely dehydrated. Hello, everyone. I am Harini Iyer, and I am not an athlete. I derive joys from a lot of things in this world, and it doesn't involve GPS or any movements, really. The last time I ran was when I was 22, and I had to run away from my home to come to this country to escape getting married. That was pretty much the last time I ran away from anything, and the last time I ran. Too bad Strava wasn't a thing back then. So anyway, the only time I really use Strava is times like these, when I'm thrown on the stage and I have my heart in my mouth and I have to record my heart rate. So what do I do at Strava? I am a server engineer, and I joined Strava about a little over a year ago, and I work on the performance improvement initiative, which is what this talk is about. So before that, I want to tell you a little story. So I grew up in India, and back in the 90s, when I was schooling, we used to get like about 2.5 months of summer holidays, and it was very common for us to, travel around the country. And so that's what pretty much every other kid was doing. And so the only mode of transportation back then was trains. And I grew up in a time when there was no internet, and probably the only thing worse than saying that is saying I grew up in a time when there was no fire. But no, I did. I grew up in a time when there was no internet. And so we had to go to these ticketing offices, and we had to buy physical tickets. So my dad used to wake me and my sister up at like 4:30 in the morning, and he'd drag us to this ticketing office. And the first thing he would do is he'd scan the room, because there are too many people there trying to get hold of best tickets possible, the best seats. And he would compute something. He would think about what are going to be the fastest moving queues, really. Right? He was 3 children short of totally avoiding that computation, but he had to do it. So he would pick 3 queues, and we'd be standing in all the 3 queues, right? So what I realized when I was writing this talk is I was taught to basically optimize very early on in life with limited resources, because you're always going to be short of resources. So flash forward to last month when I was in India, and now my dad is retired. He has this fancy phone with all the apps there, and he holds me responsible for the performance of every app. So he keeps complaining about, oh, you know what, this is so slow, and I'm like, what hurry are you in? Where are you going, right? So, but the fact is, technology has evolved, and with that, we have evolved. Our expectations have gone up. Patience has gone down. There is low tolerance for bad content, and there is absolutely no tolerance for slow content. So performance is a problem for every internet company today. And at Strava, I hope it's a simple product for our athletes, but for an engineer here, it's a pretty complex product, right? So every time an athlete does a physical activity and he or she uploads it to Strava, it becomes a Strava activity. Strava activities are the building blocks of this product with our athletes at its center. So why is Strava concerned with performance? Back in 2010, we didn't have that many athletes connected to us. We didn't have that many activities. Our data stores were small. We had like handful of engineers working on it. So performance was not a concern. But in 2017, we hit the 1 billion mark. And in 18 months, we hit the 2 billion mark with our activities. So, and we are growing exponentially since then. So performance may not be an immediate problem for us, but it will be eventually. And we want to proactively tackle that, which is why in the year 2019, it's our objective to improve the performance of our app. So it's a complex product for an engineer, and we had to have at least one focus area that we could start with. So we decided that it's going to be our feed, and we started to focus on the feed, improving the performance of our mobile feed, to be precise. So the logical next step was have good instrumentation. So we started auditing what instrumentation we have in place. We added more instrumentation. We plotted more graphs, which would help us identify the areas in our system which are slow. And it's such a powerful tool, right? It's a bearer of good news and bad news, but more importantly, it helps us in proactively monitoring if our performance is going down. So once we identify the slower parts in the system, we would then use the different tools we have to profile those parts of the system, and we'd find different problems and we'd solve it with the hope that it improves the performance. For example, one of the things we found is this query. It's select star from clubs where 1 equal to 0. Now, for those who are not familiar with SQL, you lucky people, what this means is, give me data from this table where apples is equal to oranges, or sun is equal to moon, or something totally ridiculous like that. It's a useless query. It's not going to return any data. But we did find it in our system. Now, I come from a .NET C# world, where an engineer has to literally put this query in the data layer for this query to exist, right? So I am on a hunt. I'm looking for that one engineer who has inflicted this query on the product. But the fact is that it's active record. When you do a data model.where on an active record model, and you pass in the filter, and if your filter is empty, it translates to that query. The fix was simple. Basically, just don't make that query if you don't have anything to filter on. Right? Simple. Now, this query was relatively cheap. It was like 5 milliseconds. But then it all adds up, because we found at least 10 places where we saw this query. And 50 milliseconds is a big thing in our world. So we fixed that. What I'm trying to say is, like, this is the simplest of examples that I could put in this 8-minute talk, but we look for, and we get more complex issues that we work on. And what I'm trying to really say is performance is hard. We have our days. We have good days, bad days. The good days being if we find a simple query like that with a simple fix and we are done. Like, we see like 100 milliseconds back and we are like, yay, right? The better days are when we actually find something that's really complex, and we get to rewrite some code, we get to learn new things, we refactor a lot of code, and that gives us like 400 milliseconds back. That's the day when we hit the bars, right? But then we do have bad days. Bad days are when we have to refactor, we find complex problems, we rewrite the code thinking that it's going to improve performance, but after weeks of work, we realize it has absolutely no impact. Right? And worst days are when we are just staring at the profiler logs from morning to evening. And I as an engineer, I get really insecure if I'm not writing code, right? And then this is like, sometimes I go days on end without writing code. So that startles me. Anyhow, I think about life in general. But anyway, in those days, in those hard days, right, there are two things that motivate me. One is the memory of that feeling of sitting in that first-class air-conditioned train compartment, thanking my dad for all the hard work and foresight. And he'd always tell me, hard work always pays, and nothing comes for free. And the second thing that motivates me is the very passionate, hardworking, and a very inclusive team I work with, who push me every day to do my best, be it at this work or... This is not all of my team. This is just 3 people who had hopes, any hopes that I'd run at all. And I literally saw their hopes dying that same day. So now we just do team lunches. On behalf of my team here at Strava, thank you very much for coming out tonight.
All right, it is no fun to go after Harini. My name is Leah Siebert. I'm so glad to be with you today. I am representing Strava Denver. So if you think it's cold here, we have like ice slicks at home. So super excited to be here in San Francisco. Today's actually my 1-year anniversary. So super happy about that. It's kind of a sad photo, but on the right there is a picture of my day one. Bunch of chairs rattling around and representing both like the incredible growth that office was about to go through, and in fact we are almost 30 people today, and also this like exciting sort of anticipation about what it means to be one of the first ones on the ground there. So just about 30 people, 2 product teams, and many other groups starting to form up. We like to take photos in elevators, and I think the tightness of that is part of what makes that team fun. So excited to be here today. I'm going to share sort of two themes of stories. One, how I got to Strava, and then what we work on in Strava Business and what that even means. So I've been fortunate to sort of make my way around the block in terms of the different functional roles. I started my career as an engineer, designer of physical things. So the picture there is, and the question that I was trying to tackle is, how can I deliver this stent to and through really diseased parts of the body in order to extend someone's life? That was incredibly motivating, but also really tough because you never got to see the impact of your work. I was just talking to someone earlier today about how you'd have to wait for somebody from sales or one of the 10 doctors that you're trying to influence to come and give you the case story. So from engineering, I moved into design. I was fortunate to be one of the early members of the Stanford D School, and I hope some of you have had a chance to experience that. We'll talk about it a little bit more. There was designing physical spaces to try to change behaviors of teams. So how can I create an environment that helps people think differently about the problems they're trying to solve? In this case, we actually were working with WNYC on the design of a new morning program. And we wanted to understand the best way to get them to get to those breakthrough ideas. So we actually brought the studio to morning. So saturate in the users who they'll ultimately try to appeal to. They're at the Caltrain station on University Avenue. So designing the environment to unlock a team was part of the mindset as a designer. And then finally, this more recent chapter has been in digital product development, where that experimentation and that exploration can be so fast and really fun. I'm personally really passionate about how people share expertise with each other. And I've been able to work on that in education, in shopping, in e-commerce, and more recently in health and wellness. This is a really old picture from my days at ModCloth, where people were, this is like before Instagram what it is today, but people were sharing photos about outfits they had curated and invited others to use that as a way to shop the site. So 3 chapters of career, all, believe it or not, they don't quite hang together in the way that you'd expect, but led me to Strava. Oops, not yet. So just a quick thing on the D School. One of the takeaways that has totally influenced the way I think about product and product development is not only how are you doing in the development of your solution, but is your team asking the right question? So if I took the 7 years that I spent there and gave you a 10-second crash course, it would be work as hard as you can to frame the problem in a meaningful way. And if you do that, your outcomes will be so much better. So we're going to practice that together. Imagine we are all a team, and we have gone out to collect some data and research on our space. And here's one of those data points. I don't know how that's probably skipping around. So we'll just try the easy part first. Tell me, what do you observe? What do you see in this moment? Some working out, kids. Peloton. Danger. Say that again? Kids being kids, great.
Spending time together.
Spending time together, perfect.
Curly hair.
The wind blown, yeah, the blonde curly hair. No clothes, shoes that don't fit, maybe the tossing of a dumbbell. Anyway, so we're observing directly what's going on here. Now, imagine, again, we are the product team that's reviewed all this data. What do we think, what's the opportunity here? What is the problem to solve? These are our users. What do they need? Shoes that fit. A babysitter. Right. So, great. So some of these came out, right? They need a smaller bike. They need safer toys. Maybe mom needs a lock on the workout room. So we distill all this data and we take it back to our team and we say, okay, great. Like, the problem to solve is a kid-sized bike. And so a little bit like, wah-wah, you just, like, where's the opportunity to innovate there? You really constrain that in such a tough way. So the takeaway is that it's hard. Imagine that we did some extra work and the problem to solve might be a way to capture something memorable about a workout in the basement. This is actually very close to a problem that the Strava business team has to think about. This is an image from one of my activities at Strava. That blonde is mine, believe it or not. And what, for me, this is a bike in a basement with no GPS map, no rainbows in the sky, no data. Well, how do I tell a story about these types of workouts and how does that show up at Strava? The only way that we can really unlock that is to start to work against these questions in really meaningful ways. So Strava Business, I've kind of been throwing that around. What does that even mean? This is a vertical team, meaning cross-functional group of product people, designers, engineers, our counterparts here in San Francisco on the business development team and the API team. So we think and dream all day about how to thoughtfully integrate brands into the experience. We believe there's like really meaningful, athlete-relevant way to do that, and also in support of the growth of this company. What's fun about this portfolio is that we have new explorations as well as existing products that are doing really well today. So there's a good balance and problems like the ones we just looked at to solve on the horizon. Also, much of the team is willing to come out to the Rocky Mountains in ATV with us, so that's great too. Good people. So if you think about this question, framing this question, we've applied that to challenges. That's one of the products that we work on. So a challenge is a goal and a time horizon, something like run your fastest 10K this month. Now, there's a ton of good data on how that contributes to motivation and accountability and why people like to participate in challenges. But the question, or at least the jumping off point, the question that we need to make better and better all the time is how can a partner motivate athletes in challenges? And even can they? So we developed the product to help ourselves answer that question. And this is how we lean into that existing work. Instead of being micro-focused on the kid-sized bike, change that button, make it more prominent, get more joiners. Like, what is the partner actually doing? Can they play a role to feel like a coach? What is their role here that makes it exciting? So on the left, we have a picture of the athlete profile. There's a trophy case in the middle there, and that's how athletes at Strava like to showcase the challenges that they've finished and reflect on what they've done, and the brands can play a role there. In the middle, it's the Oakley sponsored challenge, and maybe it's a little bit about redeeming a reward. I've actually been surprised to find that that's a little bit less of a motivation, this like transactional outcome. And then on the right, we're exploring new ways to communicate that challenge to people. I'm sorry, the progress in challenges to people and keep them motivated. So challenges are an existing product. Another horizon that we think about a lot is how can partners help athletes tell the story of their activity? We saw that a little bit in that basement Denver workout. It's really natural that a partner can play a role when it is the experience. So on the left, we have an example of our Zwift, we call them partner integrations. I have ridden in this virtual world, and Zwift is bringing content through the image, they're bringing data, and they're helping me represent this activity in a way that I really couldn't do on my own. So there's a natural connection for them to play there, and we're exploring how that looks across many different activities and partner types, always coming back to this question of, are they helping me tell a better story? And the way that we frame that leads before we sort of layer on the revenue goals and otherwise. And then the third one this is more future facing, and this is tied to that, back to that shopping and education and health and wellness, but how do people want to share their expertise? And do people want to tell stories about products they love? This is something that we've not attempted to build yet here at Strava, but we do see some really organic behaviors around it. So on the left, the title of that activity says new kicks, longer than expected, first time around Sloan's Lake, new shoes feel good. So without any tools or any support for people to start to share with each other what they like and what they use about the products that they show up with in their activity, we're seeing that happen. And even more directly on the right, a story about how those shoes showed up for that athlete in that moment. So existing products, new explorations, and really future-facing work. If I leave you with one, back to our crash course moment, one thing to take away, our job is not to phase features. Maybe that's part of it, but if we only focus on that, on the X, on the Y axis, the solution and how the solution evolves over time, we're kind of missing the point or missing the opportunity. Your impact can be so much greater if you are mindful of where you are on this map all the time. So is our solution right or wrong? And are we solving the right problem? If you're solving the wrong problem, nobody cares. You're in the wrong space. In order to move on to that happy place of the solution is resonating, our approach to solve a meaningful problem is right, that's what we're going for, and that's all about asking good questions. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, hello. We've had a lot of great content so far tonight. I want you to give it up again for all of these great speakers who've gone so far. And I promise you that I'm last, so we're almost there. I'm Elise. I'm a senior engineering manager on the growth team here at Strava. Annie talked about growth earlier. Tonight I'm going to talk about some things that I found you can do to help accelerate your career growth. I've been at Strava a little bit less than a year, but I've spent most of my career building consumer product. I started as a software engineer at a consultancy that built e-learning software for doctors, went to another consultancy that built video experiences for enterprise and sports broadcasting. And then I took that video experience and went to work at Vivo, where we made it so you could watch music videos online. It was there that I transitioned from being a software engineer to an engineering manager. And now I work here at Strava. So throughout my career, I found that if you can focus on learning, being resilient, having vision for where you're going, that you can have pretty effective career growth. And tonight I'm going to talk about some of my own experiences. These may not reflect your own goals or experiences, but I do feel like these three areas can apply to your career regardless of what your goals are or what your current role is. So let's define what these three terms mean. So learning is about being open to opportunities that require you to grow your skills. Resilience about being willing to take risks and then learn from failure. And vision is knowing where you're going, setting goals. So let's start with learning. I think that learning is really about pushing yourself to take that opportunity that you don't really know, like have all the skills to do yet, right? Or try that thing that you've been wanting to try but don't yet know how to do. Early in my career, I decided that I wanted to get better at public speaking. And I had always enjoyed teaching and knowledge sharing, but I was really terrified of public speaking. In fact, when I used to give talks, I would get more nervous the longer I spoke, which if you're giving like a 20-minute talk is really terrible. But I figured, you get better if you practice. So I talked more at work. I spoke at meetups. And eventually I got a talk accepted at a conference to go talk about isomorphic web apps, which was something we were working on at Vivo when I first got there. So I was really nervous. I worked on it till the very last minute. Like I barely slept that night. but it went pretty well, had a good experience, and I figured, I'll keep practicing. But about 6 months later, something pretty unexpected happened. A publisher had seen my talk, and they wanted to do a book on this topic, so they were like, hey, do you want to write a proposal about this and maybe publish a book? So I was like, sure. So I submitted a proposal, the book got accepted, and I ended up spending pretty much 2 years writing this book, Isomorphic Web Applications. So this ended up being a really fantastic learning opportunity. I had to work on all kinds of skills. I especially had to work on communication skills. I had to get much better at communicating visually, like complex technical topics. This is a really great skill if you're going to be an engineering leader, the ability to visually communicate complex technical topics. So, and the added benefit is now I'm a published author, so that's pretty cool. But I want to emphasize that I was not an expert when I started this process, right? I took a topic that I worked on at work and ended up here, right? I didn't have all the skills to do this. So it's really important to say yes to those opportunities. Like if you get the opportunity to do something hard at work, do it. Or if there's something new you want to try, go out and do that thing. So the next thing is resilience. The dictionary definition of resilience is finding happiness or success after something bad or difficult has happened. But at work, I think this is really about taking risks and not being afraid of failure and using that failure to reflect and learn. So I also think it's important to remember that a lot of times you see people standing up here talking about their career, their successes, but many people have had a lot of failure along the way, and they've learned from that failure and used it to improve and be more successful at what they're doing today. So I made this little graph. So there's your career growth against time. It's pretty stable if you don't take any risks. But if you take some risks, you might fail, and then you'll learn a whole bunch and have accelerated career growth. This is a very scientific chart. So when I worked at the video consultancy, I got a chance to lead a project. It was like the first project I'd ever led. We worked with clients, so I had to work with the client. I worked with the project manager. There was another engineer on the project. We scoped it, estimated it, felt like we were set up for success. And then the other engineer got pulled off the project. And I tried as hard as I could to make the project successful, but you can't do 2 engineers' work by yourself, right? So we missed the deadline. No fun. We had a meeting at work to talk about what went wrong, how we were going to get it done. And I felt personally responsible for the project, right? Like I had let everybody down. And I ended up crying in that meeting at work. There were 15 people in this company. I cried in front of 12 of them. So I went home. I was disappointed, frustrated, pretty embarrassed. But we finished the project. The client actually ended up being pretty happy with the product. And I thought that, I'm never going to get to lead a project again. But my boss saw it totally differently. He was like, that was a good learning experience. And, I earned respect and trust because I had showed how much I cared about making this thing successful. And this led to more opportunities in the future, right? So I think it's really important to remember that you can go and try something, and as long as you learn from it and take some things away and apply that to the thing that you do next, that will help you be more successful. Last, I want to talk about vision. Vision sounds fancy, but it's really set a goal, right? Know where you're going. So when I was interviewing for that job, the video consultancy job, I got asked, what do you want to do in 5 years? And I proceeded to tell my future boss, I would like to have your job in 5 years. So I don't recommend saying it exactly like that, but the benefit of that was that he really helped me. We worked on leadership skills. We worked on, he gave me that opportunity to lead that project, right? And actually, he was so helpful to me in my career. I had to leave that company to go to a bigger company that had more opportunity for me. So I think it's important to be clear, right? Be clear with your manager, be clear with other people who support you, mentors, peers, whoever it is you trust. Set a goal, gain new skills, ask for feedback, implement that feedback. And you don't need to have a 5-year plan. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Maybe you have a 6-month plan, right? Whatever it is, just be clear about what's next for you. So we've talked about learning, resilience, vision. I originally showed this to you in an equation, and that kind of like implies a kind of in isolation, but if you've been paying attention, they really support each other. So it's more like this loop. This, when you set a goal, then you know how to focus your learning, right? What skills do I need to gain? And if you take opportunities to learn, you might fail, but that's okay, because as we established, you'll probably learn more from that experience than if you hadn't tried, right? So all these things feed into each other and support each other. So if you remember one thing from tonight, my challenge for you is take one of these things. It's hard to work on everything at once. Take one thing, either set a goal, pick something new to learn, take a risk, but just do one thing. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to bring everyone back up on stage for the Q&A. And just a reminder, if you have a question, this is the URL. And you can vote on questions, you can add a question there. And I'm just going to remind you, this is the URL. If you are thinking these 7 women are people you want to be working with, now is the time to check out that. We're almost organized by height. So there's a lot of hiring managers on stage, for at least for Cathy, for me and Leah. We're all hiring. There's people and job openings on all these teams. And then Steve Lloyd in the back is our VP of engineering, and he would be thrilled to talk to any of you. So please make time to stay around and chat with any of us after the talk. So we will switch over to the questions, and my job is to help facilitate. Trying to get as many. I think we've had 15 entered already, and we have about 10 minutes, so we will try to answer as many as we can. I happen to know the first question I'm going to turn over to Cathy is, what are we doing to make Strava inclusive for a diverse set of genders and people?
Sure. So this is a question that could be kind of taken either as a company or kind of Strava as a product. So I'll kind of tackle both of them. So back in our history, Strava was originally kind of a cycling app. There was a bunch of cyclists who started Strava, and then at some point they decided, like, hey, we've got this great thing, GPS tracking stuff. This will work for runners too. Problem: no runners worked for the company. So part of the solution was to hire some runners who can actually help develop the product. And sort of likewise, if you think about, how can we accurately represent women's activities and women's perspective, and how women want to be represented on Strava. So part of that is having women work at Strava, hiring women, having women across all of our teams, really thinking about our design, our product, how we engineer it, how we analyze it, how we think about everything across the board. And so that's, some of the ways, some of it started with cycling. Cycling, just like out in the world, is more male dominated. Running is a lot more gender balanced, and so we've seen over time as we've had more runners joining the platform that the gender mix has been increasingly women, still more men than women, but we think being up here, being like strong, athletic, excited women, bringing more women into the fold is part of the solution.
And what about intensity of sport? I think you've shown data that says women and men are similarly intense in training.
Yes. So women are very active, out there every day, striving, doing amazing things, working out just as hard as men. So the data speaks for itself.
Great. And I'll just add on top of that, there's product features that I think are helping make it a more inclusive platform. One is the diversity of sport with Cathy highlighted. One is features like Beacon, which is a safety feature. So if you have loved ones who want to know when you're out doing an activity, which has been appealing to a lot of women. Another important feature for us is privacy zones. So obviously if you want to make your data public and be on leaderboards, but you also want to protect important addresses to you, like where you live and where you work, that's a feature we added as well. So we're continuing to look for more product things we can do, and we welcome ideas. I think these two topics are kind of bouncing back and forth as the next top one, but I think how did you weigh the trade-offs between appealing to user aspiration by calling them athletes versus potentially excluding people with imposter syndrome? And I asked Amanda to take this one.
So, can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me now? Okay. So we purposely call all of our users athletes, and that's because athletes are people who are uploading and engaging with Strava. They have uploaded an activity. They are aspiring to, or they're working towards being active in their lives, and we support them as athletes. So you don't have to be the fastest person or the strongest person to be an athlete. It's showing up in your own life, and that is essentially like why Strava exists. It's like we find, I know it sounds like kind of counterintuitive, but we are constantly trying to find ways to actually get people off of their phones and into the world doing the activities they love, and that's why we exist. And a lot of the uploads that we take from athletes are to encourage them to kind of like reframe their experience and get them back out again. And so to us, like, that is our core user, that is our athlete, and it is not defined by ability or like the person who shows up the best. Yeah.
And I just say we think about it and we talk about it and we debate it a lot. So it's a really great question. And hopefully if you use Strava, you see it in our language and our imagery. We're trying to be inclusive. If every bicycling image was of the Tour de France, nobody would feel welcome. But if you have a diversity of people and sport and moments and aspirations and summits, hopefully we're sending a message that, as Amanda said, that if you're active, you're an athlete. If you're engaging in Strava and you're uploading, you're an athlete. So the next question, I think maybe not all 6 of our speakers, but some people can jump in on how has being a woman or other underrepresented minority positively contributed to your work, performance, and perspective? Who's up?
Great question, while I think of an answer. So it's been great. Like, I don't know, I bring in a perspective that's sort of so different that it took me a long time to adjust, but it's good. I really don't know what to say. I'm just babbling away. Yeah, a mic. Oh, she has a mic.
Yeah.
So I've been in the tech world for a long time, and I was in finance before that, so I've like almost always worked with mostly men. This is sort of sounds funny, but like I was always stumbling over the guys' names because there'd be like 6 Johns and a David and a Brian and a Mark, and like they all looked the same to me, and I was like the only woman in the room, so people always remembered my name and they knew who I was. That was interesting, and I think, you know, it's not always easy being a woman. It's not always easy being the only woman in the room. It's fun when we have meetings where there's like all women in the room and we're like, hey, like there's all women here. This is cool. But it's definitely, you know, helped have empathy for other people. You know, what is it like to be the only like whatever in the room? When I see other people now who are more junior in their careers, and I can say like, hey, I know like this feels funny, or, you know, I'm somebody who's safe to talk to. I'm also a mother, which makes me sort of a unusual beast in certain situations. When I'm hiring people, you know, I say, hey, I've got kids. Like, this is a great place for, you know, to be a parent. And like that, I think, has helped me hire certain people. I don't kind of like use that as a criteria, but it shows up in you know, in subtle ways. It's really exciting to see like kind of evolution of women in tech and networking, and feeling like you're not alone, and feeling like there's some, you know, people to pass on kind of words of wisdom to.
I'm going to piggyback on that and say that in general, in my experience, women are uniquely, incredibly empathetic. And on top of that, also, I'm also a mom, and I was really nervous when I found myself like, I'm going to be a mom. Like, I'm not going to be able to show up in the same way at work every day. And I was really nervous about that. But my manager at the time was like, you are going to be amazing. This is going to be the biggest test in multitasking you are ever going to face in your whole life. You are never going to be so sleep deprived. And I was like, you know what? Actually, yeah, I'm like built for this. So I feel like there are a lot of great, I think that women bring an incredibly unique perspective, incredibly unique empathy, and also in general, like an organization, a rigor, a like kind of tenacious desire to see things all the way through, and like to do the hard things. I mean, it's just like, I think women take on like really hard problems all the time. It helps a lot when you're working at a great place. Visit strava.com/careers. That supports you. So there's that.
I do have something to piggyback so that I can come back. This doesn't work. Okay, this works. I'm also a mom, and I am probably the only woman engineer here who has a kid. So it's really difficult, and as an engineer, you can never disconnect, right? Even if you're at home, there's something going down, and there's always some issue going down or the other, right? Every day, not every day, but a lot of days. And it's at times like those, right, where I have to tell my team that, 4:30 to 9, I'm out. Don't make any important decisions without me. And the team understands. So I think if you bring in that perspective, if you explain that, not everybody relates to having to give a shower to an unwilling child, but you sort of have to make that mark yourself. So,
great. Thanks, everyone, for sharing. The next question I know is going to Cathy. Why are most users from outside the U.S.? What activity is most recorded by U.S. versus non-U.S. users? What characteristic differs from your U.S. and non-U.S. user group? And there's the word user, which is exactly what we're replacing with athlete.
I feel like there's a multi-part question and long analysis behind this that my inner analyst is saying, okay, wait a minute, let me unpack this. So why are most users outside of the US? I don't actually have a really great answer. We started here in the US. We've been in the UK for quite a while, and that's a big market for us. Brazil's another huge market. I think part of it is that Strava has really grown organically, and we have a really high percentage of new athletes that join because they heard about it from someone else. And so when you have this kind of organic word of mouth spreading, you don't necessarily pick all of the places in the world that people start joining from. But it's been really exciting for us to see that, and it's really interesting to work on a product where there are so many people who are don't live in the Bay Area. Activities most recorded by U.S. versus non-U.S., it's a bit market specific. U.S. is decently mixed between cyclists and runners. U.K. is a little more run heavy. We see certain markets like Spain is still really cycling heavy. I'm still, one stat I wanted to throw in, we look across all of our activity types, and yoga is very heavily female. We haven't found a majority yoga country yet. Still searching for that one. And characteristics that differ U.S. and non-U.S. user groups, really hard to generalize because there are actually kind of country-specific things. Brazilians are very social. Someone was recently looking at when people commute, and most people sort of commute at standard times of the day throughout the year, but Italians commute later in the summer. They sleep in. So there's some interesting patterns like that. People in the UK are really into making New Year's resolutions and work out a whole lot right after the new year and have a clear kind of drop off, and it's a little more mixed in other countries. So it really differs. I could go on and on, but I won't. But if you really want to work on interesting data, come talk to me.
I just want to add, we've, in addition to the organic community growth, which I think is completely accurate, we've also put Strava employees on the ground in many countries and found that kind of intervention and sort of building the brand and building the community ourselves is really important. And we've also started a program this year to do that in cities in the US. So we're hiring internationally and in cities in the US to do more of this type of growth. So the next question is about features, and the question is, how do you decide which features to make available on the web versus mobile? The web interface is so feature-rich compared to the mobile iOS app. Leah's going to take this one, but also remember that for a long time, Strava was a web-only product, which is different than most companies you encounter. You know, in the early days, bike computers were the only way you got data into Strava. It was much later that the mobile app and the record experience came around. Oh, you have it.
Yeah. So. Hello. Great. So I will speak on behalf of how I approach my work, because I know this is kind of a hot button or different depending on the teams, but it really depends first and foremost on the hypothesis or the question that we're trying to answer. So it may make sense to do something in a really exploratory way on the web because we can do that quickly, and because the engagement that we want is in the right place. Like if it's checking those boxes, I'm more than happy to pair with one of the web engineers on my team to advance a question and a hypothesis in that way. On the mobile apps, similar. Like for us, working in the feed with some of these partner integrations that I shared, any of the social feedback that people get, like so much of that is happening in the following feed on the mobile apps that I need to see what the engagement looks like there. So I would say it's not one size fits all. Chasing parity for parity's sake can be a quick way to blow up a roadmap, and I think what we do is just step-by-step way, what question are we trying to answer, and what is the right platform to move that forward. But probably most of what we're seeing at Strava today has to do with that history.
I think, can you dismiss the questions we've already answered? I think we have time for 2 more. This is a test. Here, hold that. Popular. Okay, let's start there. What do you recruit people coming from community college or boot camps? In other words, not from well-known universities. How old is the oldest worker? Oh, Cassandra, do you want to come up and answer this? Or Jenny? Oh, Elise is going to do it. Yeah.
Okay, so I think in recruiting, at least for engineering, the background. What? Yeah, well, yeah, so I was just going to say your background is really less important than what you can do or what you could show us that you could do someday, depending on what we're hiring for, right? We actually have lots of people working here with like a variety of non-traditional backgrounds. We have boot campers, other non-traditional backgrounds. I didn't talk about this in my talk, but I do not have a computer science engineering degree. There's a lot of other people here who don't, right? So there is no one right path to get here, right? So, yeah.
Great. I'm guessing, I don't know if I know the old age of our oldest worker? Okay, we don't, but I fear it might be me. I'm just looking around. It's awkward. So this is the last question. I know the Girl Geek X team was especially hoping I would answer one question on the Hillary campaign, and I think, yeah, woo! It's a weird question to end on, but I know because I'm checking on my mobile, it's the next most popular. And the question was, what was one thing we learned from data? I just want to say hi to Vanessa over there, if you can smile. She is my dear friend. She was on the Hillary tech team. She'd be happy to talk about it too after this talk is over. But data was at the heart of everything we did at the Hillary campaign, because at the core of it, you spend your time modeling voters, and you're trying to figure out their level of support for your candidate and the likelihood to turn out. And those two things help you figure out everything. It helps you figure out where to put field staff, where to spend your advertising dollars, what channel to try to reach people. It's much cheaper to reach them on social media or a radio ad than to send somebody to their door or send them a paid message. It affects where Hillary went and where we sent her plane and whether she did big events or small events. It affected everything. So data was at the heart of every part of the campaign. probably one of the most important things I learned early on is it's way more important to activate supporters than to persuade people. Disproportionately, Democrats don't turn out to vote, and there's all sort of like demographics, logistical, institutional law reasons that is hard, but activating supporters was our #1 goal. And so that's one way data influenced, or one insight I had about data from early days of the campaign. And I know Vanessa and I would be so happy to talk to anyone afterwards who wants to dig in. Okay, so if you can switch back to my other slides. This is the last plug, I swear. Last plug. If you have a great job and you're happy where you are, but you have a friend who wants to work at Strava, the same URL is appropriate. I want to thank the Girl Geek X team. I want to thank Cassandra, if you can wave. Just do it. She and the team of recruiting here at Strava did an extraordinary job putting this together. I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you to these amazing speakers. I think especially to all the Strava employees in the room. We didn't know Harini was such a comedian. And her profile, right? I think we'll be playing this over and over for much time to come. And the last thing, to thank all of you. For any of you who haven't tried Summit, which is the subscription version of Strava, it has a lot of the features I mentioned today, like Beacon, some heart rate analytics, lots of valuable features. If you haven't tried it yet, this is a code to get 1 month free. Okay, so 1 month free of Strava. We're going to send an email with the same details. This will only work for you, even if you're already a Strava athlete. It'll work for you if you subscribed on the web or if you've never been a Summit athlete. If you subscribed on mobile, it's just not going to work. But if you're an engineer, come here and help us fix that. So don't be mad, just come work here. And together we can fix that. That's all. We hope you'll mingle. We hope you'll meet more people, meet each other, and thank you for coming.